Hello, my name is Scott Davis. Welcome to New World Birth. This is the weekly neutrino forecast from May 8th to May 14th of 2016. And on May 8th, we have the sun. You can see it denoted here by this black circle with a dot on it. It's in Taurus. It's also in the second hexagram. And on the outside of the wheel, we have the chop mark for the second hexagram, numbered from bottom to top. It goes yin, 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 yin. And then the second hexagram is mapped to an opening in the energy channel called a gate. And right here, this is the second gate of higher knowing, the receptive. Receptivity as a primal base through which any response is determined. The root of action, located in the G center in an individual energy path in the knowing circuit called the channel of a beat, design of being the keeper of the keys, that connects to the 14th gate of power skills, possession in great measure, the accumulation and retention of power through skilled interaction, coupling grace with control. And I found human design to be amazingly accurate in describing the person, and I use it as my primary tool when I provide readings. And we have the following activated gates on May 8th. We have the sun in the second gate with the earth in the first gate. The north node is in the 47th gate with the south node in the 22nd gate. Mercury is retrograde in the 23rd gate. Venus is in the 24th gate. Mars is retrograde and it's in the 9th gate. Jupiter is stationed or at a standstill as it turns direct on the 9th in the 64th gate. We have Saturn retrograde in the 5th gate. Uranus is in the 42nd gate. Neptune is in the 63rd gate. And Pluto is in the 54th gate. So obviously not every gate activation forms a channel, but this information can be very helpful if you know your own human design chart, because some of these transits will form channels with potentials in your personal body graph. And we begin the week with one channel definition due to the transit field. With Jupiter in the 64 and the North Node in the 47, we've got the channel of abstraction and design of mental activity mixed with clarity until June 7th. The energy of this channel is about creating something new out of something old. This is about abstract thought being brought into the collective consciousness through the arts, philosophy, history, and culture. It's wonderful energy for telling stories about our experiences that inspire others, but brings confusion when used to try to resolve our own issues. Defined head center can bring pressure to think about things that don't matter. And the defined Ajna center can influence people to believe that they're certain of something even when they are not. And on the 8th, the day begins with the sun in the 6th line of the second hexagram. The sun in the 6th line of the second hexagram is fixation, unable and unwilling to see the whole process. Exalted, the intellect becomes absorbed in constant rationalization. Higher knowing, that is extremely narrow in its receptivity. Detrimented, the need for security that may distort awareness to its ultimate perversion, destructiveness. The higher self absorbed with the mundane and the need for security. And then later on the 8th, the sun moves out of the second hexagram and it joins Mercury in the 23rd, and the Earth moves out of the first gate and hexagram into the 43rd gate and hexagram, which then defines the throat. And so we've got the Earth in the 43rd gate of insight breakthrough. In order for achievement to maintain, a new order must be fairly established. This shift happens at 9:45 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and the sun in the 23rd gate of assimilation, splitting apart, amorality, the awareness and understanding which leads to the acceptance of diversity. And the sun in the first line of the 23rd hexagram is proselytization, the attempt to undermine one set of values for another. Exalted, the sage who in the extreme can defend evil as part of the greater good. the powerful expression of an insight which will undermine established values. Detriment, the missionary whose very light brings darkness, the powerful expression of an insight which will produce negative effects. And as we move from the second hexagram to the 23rd hexagram, we enter the gate of assimilation. The throat gate that says, I know. It's an individual gate that empowers amoral expression. It's amorality or not, so it could be morality, which is the same thing depending on the context. Its polarity and harmonic gate it is the same. It's the 43rd gate of breakthrough. Together, they form a projected channel of genius to freak. The not self of the 23rd is I insist. Insisting that they know, and it can be deaf as an individual gates can be, so they don't listen. The 23rd doesn't take things in, it splits them apart. This brings the second variation of the cross of explanation. If the speaker wants to be seen as a genius rather than a freak, they must wait to be invited and share their insight and then explain it in a step-by-step manner what their breakthrough is. The first time they express this concept, it will sound bizarre, but after it's repeated, it becomes familiar. It mutates over time as it keeps getting expressed, becoming less and less alien, and as it does, resistance diminishes. The 23rd is insistent and persistent that its knowing is correct, and with enough repetition, it eventually can be accepted. The listener realizes, oh yeah, I've heard that before. And with the Sun and Mercury in the 23rd gate and the Earth in the 43rd gate, we've got the channel of structuring until May 14th. This is about individuals having amazing insights that require two conditions to be fulfilled to be recognized by others. First, the person who has the epiphany needs to wait to be invited to share his or her insight. And second, they need to explain their idea in a step-by-step process so that their audience can methodically understand how this quantum leap was arrived at. More likely, this is going to be a time period where people blurt out whatever is on their mind, so I expect we'll encounter more freaks than geniuses. And the defined ajna center, as we talked about before, can influence people to believe they're certain of something even when they're not. The defined throat center can influence people to talk about what they know to attract attention. And this is individual circuitry, so it brings with it the melancholy or blue feelings that are best used in some type of creative activity. On the 9th, the Sun then moves into the second line of the 23rd hexagram at 9:01 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. The Sun in the 23-2 is described as self-defense, the need to abandon tolerance when survival is threatened, exalted. The principle of perseveration at its most acute, the abandonment of tolerance when individual expression is threatened, detriment and satisfaction with just protecting oneself by fending off hostility, the defense of individual expression in the face of hostility. And then also on the 9th, Mars backs out of the 9th gate, as it's going retrograde at this point, and it moves into the 34th gate. And so we've got Mars that's in the gate of power, the power of the great. Power is only great when its display or use serves the common good. And it's Mars is retrograde, so it backs into the 6th line of the 34th hexagram, which is common sense, knowing when enough is enough. Exalted, the good sense when having bit off more than one can chew, to spit part of it out. The restriction of the release of power when one does not have the strength to maintain it. detrimented enthusiasm overriding better judgment inevitably leads to complications, the lack of restrictions that can sap one's strength. And Ross spoke about Mars being an extraordinary and immature energy resource that lacks refinement and is subject to outbursts. On the 10th, the Sun then moves into the third line of the 23rd hexagram at 8:17 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. The Sun is exalted in the 23-3 as individuality, independent expression that is not by its nature detrimental to others, exalted vitality and personal power that can engender jealousy but not threat. Individual expression which attracts attention but not threat. And then also on the 10th, retrograde Mercury backs out of the 23rd gate, leaving the Sun in the 23rd gate, and it backs into the second gate. And on the same day, a little later in the day, Venus moves, and it's moving direct, so it leaves the 24th gate and joins Mercury in the second gate. So Mercury in mythology was the messenger of the gods, so this is about communication, expansion of human consciousness through communication, not just as words, but also as music, according to Ra, and it's in the gate of higher knowing, the receptivity as a primal base through which any response is determined, the root of action. And retrograde Mercury, again, it's moving backwards, so it enters the sixth line of the second hexagram, which is where it's exalted in fixation, unable and unwilling to see the whole process. Exalted, the intellect becomes absorbed in the constant realization, higher knowing that is extremely narrow in its receptivity. And then also we've got Venus moving from the 24, joining Mercury in the second gate. And Venus is in human design is about values, morality, natural law in which we deal with the other and the consequences of the world around us. And Venus is also in the second gate of higher knowing. Venus is exalted in the first line of the second gate, which is intuition, sensitivity to disharmony and atrophy, exalted the importance of aesthetics, whether inborn or acquired, higher knowing through aesthetics. And on the 11th, the Sun then moves into the fourth line of the 23rd hexagram at 7:35 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. The Sun in the fourth line is exalted, but it's also being detrimented because we have the Earth in the 43rd gate. So when you see an exaltation, it's an upward pointing arrow. When you see a detriment, it's a downward pointing arrow. So when we look at the Sun in the fourth line of the 23rd hexagram, it's going to look like a six-pointed star. And its description is fragmentation, diversification without a perceived potential for synthesis, exalted fatalism and egotism, and damn the consequences. Individual expression that has no collective value, detriment, atheism and paranoia, individual expression that engenders isolation and fear. On the 12th, the Sun then moves into the fifth line of the 23rd hexagram at 6:53 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. The Sun in the 23-5 is assimilation, the practical acceptance of values of another path, exalted expansion and contribution through assimilation, the gift of communicating individual insight to the collective, detrimented motive-driven assimilation from an inferior position, i.e. for protection or nourishment, motive-driven assimilation for the acceptance and protection from the collective. On the 13th, the Sun then moves into the sixth line of the 23rd hexagram at 6:12 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. The sun in the 23/6 is fusion, the gradual attunement of diversity through synthesis, exalted the exponential growth of energy and its potential for assertion engendered by fusion, intellectual knowing which brings diversity to synthesis, detrimented the principle but futile withdrawal from fusion that can lead to atrophy, individual knowing that holds on to diversity and loses its power in expression. And then on the 14th, the sun moves out of the 23rd gate, and the Earth moves out of the 43rd gate, meaning that we no longer have a defined throat center, but we do have excuse me, the sun moves into the 8th gate, and the Earth moves into the 14th gate, which then brings us a defined G center and a defined sacral center. And so we've got the Earth is in the 14th gate of power skills, possession in great measure, the accumulation and retention of power through skilled interaction, coupling grace with control. And this shift happens at 5:32 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And we've got the sun, it's in the 8th gate of contribution, holding together the basic worth realized in contributing individual efforts to group goals. And the sun in the first line of the 8th hexagram is honesty, the truthful acceptance of limitation and recognition that can only be transcended through sharing, exalted, the awareness that the whole is always greater than the sum of the parts, knowing that the creative expression must be honestly communicated and shared, detrimented withdrawal, the fear of losing individuality in the group environment. The design to share creativity at the expense of individuality. And as we've moved from the 23rd hexagram and gate to the 8th, we leave splitting apart and move into the gate of holding together, the gate of contribution, the voice of the throat that says, I know I can make a contribution or not. And it's harmonic. The first gate is of creative self-expression. So when we think about the first gate, it's the artist. So the 8th gate is the gallery owner who provides a venue to bring the artist's work to the audience. The polarity of the 14th gate, where the Earth is possession in great measure, an individual sacral gate of specialized power. Gate 8 contributes everything that comes out of the center channels of the knowing circuit. This is coming from the root through the sacral, through the G center to reach the throat. And so this starts out with the 6th gate in the root and the potential for depression. And then the 3rd gate in the sacral is the difficulty at the beginning. And the 14th gate can bring power struggles. And the 2nd gate in the G is the struggle with direction on the material plane. And then the 1st gate is the struggle to express individual creativity. And this brings us to this second variation of the cross of contagion. In the quarter of civilization, this is about making a contribution that's going to bring security and wealth. Excuse me. It's individual, so it's about mutation that evolves the civilization. It's about empowering others by being our authentic selves. The individual takes a risk and discovers something new, which may eventually be accepted by the rest of the community. Changes in the tribe and the collective all begin with the individual. And with the Earth in the 14th gate, and we've got both Mercury and Venus in the second gate. This brings us the channel of the beat, a design of being the keeper of the keys until May 20th. This adds energy to follow our own direction in life through the experiences that empower others, either directly or indirectly. This could be a time when folks need to follow their inner mission in life. People will surrender more to their rhythm rather than making decisions through thinking. People with this channel have the skill to manipulate change in the direction that they wish, as long as they're waiting to respond to life. The defined G center could influence folks to obsess about where they're headed or where they might find love. And the defined sacral center affects non-generator types and feeling busy and having the endurance to work. Obviously, you don't want to get used to it. But they also may think that they know when enough is enough, which could lead to the premature or abrupt end to something that really needs more time. And this is another individual channel that brings melancholy or blue feelings that are best used, channeled into some type of creative activity. So I want to thank you for checking out New World Birth. The next segment of the weekly neutrino forecast will be for May 15th, 2016. Should be available on the 14th, when we'll continue to look at the influence of the heavenly bodies as they transit the sky and the hexagrams of the I Ching. You can check us out on Facebook, Blogger, or YouTube, and I encourage you to share this information as videos or as text as widely as you choose. I invite you to contact me at newworldbirth@yahoo.com if you have any questions or you wish to schedule a reading. And if you've been thinking about getting a reading, please contact me. I'd love to provide you a reading during these uncertain times. You'll need to be able to either call me in Maine in the USA, or we can connect with Skype to receive your reading. We're also accepting donations to keep these reports freely available. And as always, I am blessed that you've taken the time to connect with my passion for these ancient mysteries, their synthesis and application to our journey during this incarnation. The light in me honors the light in you. Namaste, in Lakesh, and as Ra would say, love yourself. All my best to you, and I hope to look forward to connecting in the future.